Dalton Roberts. Enjoy the show.
Dalton Roberts is a humorist, musician, poet, songwriter, author, newspaper columnist, politician, and front porch philosopher. As a politician, he served 16 years in the highest elective office in Hamilton County, Tennessee, and was given the honorary title of County Executive Emeritus. As a musician and songwriter, he has played the Grand Ole Opry, wrote a #1 song, as well as an NBC TV theme song. He has several CDs and tapes of his songs and stories. His popular columns in several newspapers and magazines feature humor, politics, human interest stories, religion and philosophy, and just about anything that fascinates his uncommon curiosity. He has written 2 books, Things That Really Matter and Kickstarts. His articles and poems have appeared in dozens of national magazines. He was honored by the National Management Association as the Outstanding Manager of the Year in 1991. During his tenure as county executive, his administration won over 100 national awards for excellence. So, ladies and gentlemen, here to share some down-home tales, stir-fried and front porch picking, is the down-home fun-osopher from down-home Watering Trough, Tennessee, Dalton Roberts.
Well, thanks. I think Albert Gore needs to hire that man. Because they say Gore is not all that interesting, you know. He just needs somebody to introduce him. If you get introduced properly, you don't have any problems. I appreciate that good introduction. And this warm response from the Stump Farmers of America. Oh, what a privilege it is to be here with such an unusual group. Now, I don't know exactly where you got that name, and I don't think anybody's going to tell me the whole truth, but I picked up a few ideas about it. I feel at home here because I belong to the International Blue Tick Society. And I know you've probably never heard of that. Just as many people out there in this world that have not heard, the same number of people that have not heard of the Stump Farmers of America have also not heard of the International Blue Tick Association. But I'm glad to be a member, and at one of the very first meetings, they elected me the Grand Bloviator. And I felt real good about that. Boy, I was peacocking to beat 90. And one day I went to the dictionary, and it said, bloviation means a politician who talks incessantly and never says anything. But I understand that this is probably not, well, I'd hate to use the word lazy. This is not, I don't want to call you lazy, but I understand that you originally were all big cattle barons. And as you got tired of cleaning up after the cows, and that is a rough job. I've had a little experience with that. Not much, because I made sure I didn't get much. So you decided that you would try something a little bit easier. So you cut down all of the trees and started raising stumps. That's what I was told by your illustrious president. And he said some people wanted a stump farm because they had seen these Western movies where those different guys, you know, you remember all those old Western stars, Johnny Mac Brown and Roy Rogers, and would go running, and they would jump up in the air and hit the horse's rump with their hands and spin herself up in the air and hit the saddle. And if this group was a little bit too lazy to try that, so they just decided they'd jump from the stump. I don't know. I don't really know where it is, but I do know every time I appear somewhere, I try to write a song about somebody in a high position with that group, or about that group itself. Now, I guarantee you, stump farming would have been a fertile grounds for a song. And I might have to write a song one of these days about stump farming. In fact, I've already got a few lines. But your president is such an interesting man. And all of the information, all I do, now I want Mr. Lillard to know that all I do when I'm going to write a song about somebody is simply send some people in that organization some sheets to write out inside information on that. And I generally get back 1 or 2 sheets. I got back 27 on here. And I actually could have written and did, well, I wrote part of 2 songs, but one of them I can't sing in a group like this because I had no idea at a Stump Farmers Convention there's going to be this many lovely ladies. So I'll have to sing that one privately to him. But I did do another song for him. And I didn't put one thing in it except what people put on those sheets of paper. So if he gets upset, I understand, you know, he's also sensitive about his name. His first name, in case any of y'all didn't know it, is Jasper. When he was just a little bitty boy, he said, Daddy. His daddy said, yes, son, what is it? He said, when I get big, can I have a whole bunch of cows? And his daddy said, why, certainly, son. When you get big, you can have all the cows you want, Jasper. He said, the next time you call me Jasper, I'm going to pop your jaws. So he'll probably pop my jaws before I leave here tonight. Now, Worth is a good old boy. The only trouble is, ain't nobody figured what he's good for. He's the Mike's County Flash, 100% trash. He's got a lot of class, you know, but it's on low. He spent his younger years in the worst kind of way. Drinking shining beers made him what he is today. He's the Mike's County Flash, 100% trash. He's got a lot of class, you know, but it's all low. Ho-de-lee-lo-de-lee. Worth Miller, president of the Stump Farmers of America. Well, I spent many years in politics, and so they fumigated me as soon as I got here tonight. Somebody was standing at the door and sprayed me down with something that smelled like oranges. But, you know, I've never really been absorbed into the political mentality. I got into politics, well, just tell you the truth about it, because I need a job. I got fired from a political job, so I ran for one. And the people of America are so merciful. I didn't have any money. You know, today you can't get elected to nothing without a ton of money. That's what controls it. I didn't have any money, but I got elected 4 times. And I think it was mercy more than anything else. So, all these years I've been in politics, you would think that I would just have written tons of songs about politics and politicians, but I've only written one. And it came out of a temper tantrum I had one day. I picked up the paper and I read where in Buffalo, New York, every year on his birthday, people gather from all over the world, especially America, and they make fun of the greatest president this nation has ever had. For one solid week, they make fun of him. They have do-nothing contests, all kinds of just derogatory things like that, insinuating that he was dumb and stupid and never did anything. I'm telling you, folks, he's the greatest president we ever had. I know you know who I'm talking about. The great Millard Fillmore. Well, you say, why would you sit down and write a song about Millard? Before I finish this song, you're going to know why he's the greatest president we ever had. You won't have any more questions about it. But before I get to that main clincher that will sell you if nothing else does, let me tell you this. He was the first president to ever bring a bathtub into the White House. Think about that a minute. George Washington not only had old clanky wooden teeth, he stunk. There were 12 presidents before Millard, and not one of them had a bath while he was on duty there. And if it was like President Clinton, he was there 24 hours a day. Millard, he moved that bathtub in there. That's one good reason, isn't it? Another reason is he didn't put a bunch of junk on his walls. You ever go in a politician's office and notice his walls have got pictures of him shaking hands with the president and him with the governor? I was in a politician's office just the other day, and he had a picture of him shaking hands with 3 or 4 presidents and 3 or 4 governors and 3 or 4 United States senators. Like he was proud of that. Well, the president of Oxford University in England floated over here on one of them big boats. And in case you didn't know it, in the 1850s, they didn't have airplanes. Didn't have cars, so you had to ride on a boat if you was going anywhere, including down to the grocery store on the corner. So he floated over here on one of those big boats. He had come to the White House unexpectedly, and he had this beautiful thing underneath, had a little drape over it, and he said, "Mr. President, I'm here from Oxford University to present you an honorary doctorate from Oxford University." Now, what would Clinton give for that? Or Nixon? Can you imagine offering Nixon something like that? He'd have went into a history. I can't imagine any politician I've ever known. He wouldn't gladly grab that and stick it up on his wall and make sure that anybody, no matter which door they came in or went out, saw it. Millard took one look at it and he said, "Sir, in good conscience, I cannot accept this." Well, the blind, he was just shocked. He was just absolutely shocked. He said, "What do you mean, Mr. President? I can't talk like English people, or I would." I love the way they talk. Boy, I watch them James Bond movies just to hear that. And they used to have a late night thing called The Avengers. Boy, I love that. Because you can listen to that 10 times, and if you pay real close attention, you can talk like them. But anyway, he said, "What do you mean, Mr. President?" He said, "I cannot accept it because I can't read it." I cannot read it. It was written in Latin. He said, "I'm not about to put something up on my wall that I can't read to people." So that's just another reason. Then another good reason is when he retired and went back to Buffalo. By the way, he started a political party, and it was called the Know Nothing Party. I'm not kidding you. It was the Know Nothing Party. I'm a politician, and I wouldn't lie to you. And I thought that's the only man in American history that's really told the truth. If you name parties what they ought to be, you know, that it'd be like don't know much, or sometimes like Millard's case, know nothing. But there's one line in here that will convince you he's the greatest president we've ever had. I bet you never heard of Millard Fillmore, our 13th president. He didn't have much schooling, but look how far he went. Some people giggle when you mention his name. Now that proves he ain't got much sense. If we could just have old Millard back, we wouldn't be in this mess we're in. Don't knock Millard Fillmore. He kept us out of Vietnam. He actually cut the postage rate, and he didn't make no bonds. He didn't try to tax the unemployed or tell kids they couldn't pray. Before you knock old Millard Fillmore, think of what you got today. By the way, I wrote this when Reagan was president. I don't know whether you caught it or not. There's a line in there that says he actually cut the postage rate. You tell me another president that ever cut the postage rate. I go to the post office and get a roll of them stamps, and before I get halfway through it, they've raised the postage rate. I got to go back and get 1, 2s, and 3s and double and triple lick everything I'm out. Well, he didn't try to cut our old folks' checks, and interest rates were low. That's how it was in the 50s when Millard ran the show. I'd give anything if Millard was on the scene today. But he's been dead 100 years, and I'm afraid he's going to stay that way. Don't knock Millard Fillmore, my favorite president. He didn't ship no wheat to Russia, and we had full employment. He made Daniel Webster our Secretary of State. Before you knock old Millard Fillmore, remember Alexander Hyde. I know you remember Alexander Hyde, surely. Remember when Reagan got shot? Some network news person called the White House, and Alexander answered the phone and said, "Don't worry about a thing. I'm in charge here." And the whole nation said, "Oh my God." I know when the good buddy there a while ago introduced me, he talked about the down-home philosopher. Isn't that a good word? I created that one myself. I like to create words. And I love philosopher. I created one called Grubarius. When somebody's telling me something, you know, and they're really just dying for me to respond, I said, "Grubarius, man, Grubarius." And they say, "Thanks." And I love philosopher. They used to, when American Forum started booking me, they called me the down-home philosopher from downtown Watering Trough, Tennessee. And I just one day I thought, well, what I do, I'd have more fun at it than philosophize. So, but anyway, down-home philosopher from Watering Trough, Tennessee. And I know you're saying in your head there ain't no such place as Watering Trough, Tennessee. But there is, my shallow Americans. And I was raised right there at the foot of that spring. And the health department's got a big sign up there now saying that there's certain kinds of amoebas or something other been found in that water, and I still go by there and drink it. Because I'm going to tell you why. It's got an aphrodisiac in it. People come, that's what Ponce de Leon was hunting when he found Florida. But that water just flows out of there, just so sweet. I keep a cup in my car and I stop in there and get me a drink of that water. And one night I was over at my doctor's house, Dr. Bill Finley, and I said, I got to get on home. I got a county commission meeting in the morning. He said, well, I need to get on to bed too because said I got a patient coming in at 8:30. I said, well, I'm sorry about your case. You're going to feel worse than me tomorrow because I'm going to the water trough and get me a drink of that water. And I went on to tell him what all it'd do for you. Make you strong, virile. Boy, isn't that a good word? I love that. Well, he said, I'll just go over there with you. He pulled that knapsack in behind my little Chevrolet and trucked over there to the watering trough for me, and I forgot all about it. About a year later, I saw his wife, and she said, I don't know what in the world you told the doctor. I said, he'll get out of bed at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and go over and get a gallon of that water and sit up and drink it a while. Well, let me tell you, there's a fountain of youth down in Chattanooga where Missionary bridge goes trailing off. Now people around there readily swear you can cure whatever ails you with a cool drink from the watering trough. It'll make you feel so good that you'll wish you were dead. It'll make your hormones flow. It'll make your comb turn red. Now people been known to drive all the way from the state of Arkansas for a cool drink from the watering trough. Sometimes I'll put on a performance in a school. I know it's not safe, but they do turn me loose in schools every once in a while. And when I get to that part of that song that says it'll make your comb turn red, those kids sit there with the most blank look on their face you've ever seen. They think of that comb in their hip pocket, I reckon, you know. They never seen a rooster in April or May. Well, I go away, but I never stay far from that old fountain, 'cause I start getting weak and falling off. When I feel the pain, I grab a plane and get back to Chattanooga for a cool drink from the watering trough. It'll make you feel so good that you wish you were dead. It'll make your hormones flow. It'll make your comb turn red. Now people been known to drive all the way from the state of Arkansas. That must have been Clinton. That's what happened to him. That explains Monica and everything. For a cool drink from the watering trough. You know, it's funny how you can sing a song 100 times and one day the truth dawns on you. That explains Monica right there. They need to put another sign up there at the watering trough, not to let any presidents drink out of that thing until they get out of office. And by the time they get out of office, they need to drink a whole bunch of it. Well, I want to tell you, I've got an album I'm working on right now called, I was going to call it The Gay Dog, and other songs you'll never hear on the radio, but that was before I wrote one called Missionary Stew. And when I wrote Missionary Stew, by the way, it seems like every song I write gets me in hot water with somebody. I wrote one time called The Perfect Girl, and the women's livers didn't like it. At last I found the perfect girl. What man could ask for more? She's deaf and dumb and oversexed and owns a liquor store. And there's something in that women's livers didn't like. And The Gay Dog, I sung that on the Grand Ole Opry, but I've had some people who get a little uppity about it. But nevertheless, that doesn't change the fact that a crossdresser, a professional crossdresser who plays in comedy clubs, gay comedy clubs all over the country, has been using it now for years, and he said it was his most requested song in the gay nightclub. So I'm telling you folks, it ain't just Stump farmers that like me. I'm a big ticket among the crossdressers. And I think in a minute I ought to just have to do my newest song about the Alabama crossdresser. But now let me tell you about Missionary Stew. I did this song at a Rotary convention one time. And a few days later, this black guy wrote me a 2 or 3 page letter telling me that the song stereotyped blacks. And I said, I don't see it that way any more than I said, I think it's a historical fact that there have been cannibals in Africa. And I don't think that stereotypes you any more than the fact that we had Jeffrey Dahmer stereotypes me. And I said, if you'll forgive me for Jeffrey Dahmer, I'll forgive you for your African ancestors, because after all, back then, they didn't have a grocery store on every corner like they got now. But Mark Twain talked about this guy who studied for 12 years this little intricate African dialect because he wanted to be a missionary. And he went to Africa, and here's what happened. A missionary went to serve in Africa. In 1852, they say. The natives were so glad the day he walked into their camp. They threw a party at the close of day. He said, I've learned to speak your language fluently. I hope you'll want to hear the things I say. I have good news to bring you of a better way of life. And they said, arise, our friend, and have your say. He stood up and he spoke with great conviction. They chanted Ungawa and danced some too. Then they rolled out a big pot and got the water hot and threw him naked in the boiling brew. Then they ate him. Yeah, they ate him, and I guess the poor boy never ever knew. Ungawa in their land means time for supper, man. Let's have a bowl of missionary stew. I guess you see no moral to my story, but someday, friend, my song might serve you well. If someone ever chants Ungawa and starts to dance, pick up your Bible, man, and run like hell. 'Cause they'll eat you. Yeah, they'll eat you. And what good then will all your preaching do? So heed my message, friend, or someday you might end within a bowl of missionary stew. Let's have a bowl of missionary stew. Oh, Lord. I was raised right close to a place where a little black girl used to stand on the street corners with her older brother Clarence, her younger brother Andrew, and sang the blues all day long. And they had plenty to sing the blues about because their mother and daddy was both dead. She was 8 years old, the middle child of 5. No food stamps, no welfare. Her name was Bessie Smith, the Empress of the Blues. I decided to write a blues album about her and her magnificent life. Andrew, get your guitar. Let's go down on that street. Andrew, get your guitar. Let's go down on that street. The kids all getting hungry. Gotta take them home to pig's feet. Yeah, you heard me right. Some days I just play all day long. Dance. At the end of the day, you just have enough money for a couple of pig's feet. When she was the highest paid female entertainer in the world, had her own railroad car outfitted in red velvet. She always kept a jar of pig's feet on there. And everybody said, Bessie, why do you keep them stinking pig's feet on here? She said, you can afford anything in the world you want to eat. She said, I do it to remember where I come from, how hard it was in those days. And she said, I also do it because I like them. Well, one year on her birthday, I got a bunch of hillbillies over at my house, and we were sitting around singing the blues and talking about Bessie. I got the bright idea worth of going down there to the grocery store and getting a big jar of pig's feet, and I so commenced to do. I came back up there and put them out on the table, and it seemed like everybody picked at it a little bit, but nobody ate much of it. All I got to say is, Bessie, I love you, but you can have them pig's feet. She was only 9 years old, but she was 19 on the street. She was only 9 years old, but she was 19 on the street. She'd sing the money out of your pocket. She'd sing the shoes right off your feet. Jimmy Rogers got the blues from a train in Mississippi. Miss Bessie got the blues from the choo-choo Chattanooga, Tennessee. Then they both got together and gave the black and white blues to me. I was going down to Gulfport, Mississippi a few weeks ago, and I remembered when Macho Montana Al Harvey was over at my house one day, and Montana had told me something. He was working on some kind of little idea along the lines that it's not smart to be a transvestite in Saudi. That's a little community outside of Chattanooga, and without telling you a lot about Saudi, you can take my word for it. It's not a good place to be a transvestite. Well, I couldn't find anything that rhymed with transvestite, so I'm trucking down through Alabama, and I happened to come up with a line or two, and between Birmingham and Gulfport, I wrote this little song, and it's my newest offering to the world. It's going to be the title song on my new album. I've got an album coming out called Missionary Stew and Other Songs That Got Me in Hot Water. And I know this one's going to get me in some hot water too. You wouldn't buy me panties if I begged you. You're ashamed of who I am and what I do. You want us to move to San Francisco. If I'm gonna keep on dressing up like you, it's not smart to cross-dress in Montgomery. You never know when Bubba might drop in and say, man, watch that get-up you are wearing, while you stand there in your petticoat and grin. You tried to hide your purse and red pumps from me, but I found them there upon the closet shelf, and I modeled them today before your mirror. And I look great if I do say so myself. I love that wonder bra you bought at Penny's. Why did you hide it in your cedar chest? Were you jealous that I might look better in it? Well, you're right, I tried it and it fits me best. But it's not smart to cross-dress in Montgomery. You never know when Bubba might walk in and say, Hoss, what's that get-up you are wearing, while you stand there in your petticoat and grin. Well, I wasn't sure that this was going to be as classy a group as I normally play to, but you like that song, so I believe the Stump Farmers are pretty classy. Well, I guess there's only one song here that I want to do before I close with a little inspirational song. When I was writing that blues album, I wrote so much black blues, twin guitar stuff, and that gentleman that just introduced me a while ago was one that he played on that. He's not just a stump farmer. In fact, I've been watching him a little bit because when I was here setting up my equipment today, somebody called him Precious Pudding Pie. I've been, I'm a little careful. I'm just a slight bit careful about it. But I was raised in an area where we had a different kind of blues. I like black blues, really like it a lot. I like the harmonica of black blues. And of course, the blacks don't have patent on harmonicas and guitars, but they play them awful well. And I've got quite a collection of blues, and that's some of my favorite. But I don't know whether you ever heard the word Piedmont blues, but Piedmont blues is what people in the South, Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, Alabama, and other places generally call the Travis blues. It's a fingerstyle blues. So when I was doing that album, I kept trying to figure out how to get back to my roots, not just to Bessie Smith's black roots, but to my roots. And I happened to think about the old Piedmont blues or the Travis blues, and I wrote a little song called Absolutely Necessary Blues. The rain beating on my window pane woke me up to emptiness. And some of my friends came to cheer me up again, saying, just can't go on like this. But sometimes the blues is as close as you can get to happiness. When you lose, it's just some things that you got to cry your way through, like the absolutely necessary blues. And someday you'll know what I'm talking about when you land on the bottom. Can't climb your way out, it ain't something you plan, it ain't something you choose. It's them absolutely necessary blues. With pain coming down on my brain like the rain outside my door, I sit with my head in my hand and sometimes I walk the floor. Now this ain't no ordinary kind of blues I can shake with a change of attitude. It's them eating up your mind, crying, walking, hurting kind. Them absolutely necessary blues. Them absolutely necessary blues. I want to tell you a true story that was led to one of the most beautiful periods of my life, one of the most inspirational times of my life. I was out visiting the Hamilton County Nursing Home one day, and the assistant director said, "Come back here, I want you to meet somebody." And she took me back in the patient's area and introduced me to this little man who looked like a human pretzel. His little hands were laying flesh against his arms, inside of his arms. They were completely turned back against his arms, both of them. His legs were completely turned back under his body. And he couldn't keep his tongue in his mouth. He had polio, and he was in his 40s. And that's the story about him. That's the reason she wanted me to go see him. She said when he was in his 40s, he had polio, and his mother died nursing him. And said he had a couple of brothers that must not have been anything like her, because as soon as she died, they beat him and stomped him so bad. They took him to the hospital, and the doctor said, carry him on out to the Pauper's Hospital, which at that time was called Bork. And they took him out there. The doctor said he won't be able to daylight. He's too damaged. He was sick too, bear in mind that he had polio. So sick that his mother killed herself standing up giving him alcohol baths. They took him out there, but he did not die for 30 years.
Wow.
And there I was looking at him. So we walked back out in the hall, and I said, "Why did you do that to me?" I said, "That was a shock to me. I didn't want to gawk at him, but he's really just, he's just so twisted." She said, "Well, I put the money in the budget for a wheelchair for him, and somebody up there at the courthouse took it out, and I want it back in there." She said, "He used to hunt and fish, and he loved the outdoors, and he wants to get out in the outdoors here, and we got to have a wheelchair that he can guide with his chin or his teeth." I said, "What did it cost?" She said, $4,700. I said, "Okay, I'll see that it stays in next year. I'll do everything I can to fight for it." Well, I turned around and started to walk off, and I thought about a conversation I had with my mother. You'd never think that a guy that's as light-hearted and probably as light-headed as I am has a side to him to pay much attention to things, but my mother was a very religious woman, and not only that, she was a very spiritual woman, which was much more important. I tell you, if my mother got to praying about just about anything, I just figured it was going to happen. That's the way it was. That's the way it was. And it did. And one day she told me, she never did like me playing the old guitar in nightclubs. But where are you going? How's she going to play country music? And so I always had to play it. Toward the end of her life, she did come to hear me in a couple of places. But she told me one day, she said, "I want you to write some songs for the Lord." She said, "Son, it's not enough to tithe your money. God owns a cattle on 1,000 hills. Tithe your time and tithe your talent. And I want you to write some songs for the Lord." And I'd always say, "Well, Mom, I'll do that. Mom, I'll do that." So when this happened where they needed money for that wheelchair, when I started walking off, I turned around and come back, and I said to the assistant administrator, "Bobby, if I write a bunch of inspirational songs and gospel songs, will you get some groups to sell it and we'll go ahead and buy him his wheelchair? And she said, yes. And before I really got back to the courthouse good, she had 7 groups lined up to sell those albums. And I had to write them then. So you think that's simple? I started trying to write those songs, and I couldn't write the first song. So I went to see Mama one day. I said, I need your help. If I'm going to write those gospel songs, I need some help. I said, I love gospel music, but I can't write them. And she said, son, what's the first thing you do when you pick up that old guitar? I said, I guess I check to see if it's in tune. She said, I know you do. Why don't you let the Lord tune you up and you can write those songs? She said, have you asked him to help you? And I said, no, ma'am. She said, you ask him, and I'll ask him too, and he'll help you write those songs. When she said she would ask him, I perked up. I walked back home. I didn't live far from her at that time. I walked back home, and when I got back home, I sat down at the kitchen table, and in less than an hour, I had written the first 2 songs of that album. And after that, for the next 2 or 3 months, no matter where I went, it seemed like a song would fly in the window of my car just like a bird. And in no time, I had that album finished. And we put it on sale. And in 3 weeks, the brother was sitting in his wheelchair and going out among the trees and among the wildlife and enjoying it. And it was worth it to me just to see it. This is one of the songs that I wrote when I got back to the house that day. She was just a woman of the street, and they threw her in shame at Jesus' feet. As they stood there with stones in their hand, he stooped and wrote something in the sand. I think he wrote, you can always start again. No matter who you are or what you've been, I'll help you if you'll give me your hand. Yes, I wonder what he wrote in the sand. They said, Master, she should die for her wrong. He said, if you have no sin, then cast your stone. And one by one they dropped them from their hand. At the words he was writing in the sand, I think he wrote, only love can change a man. So love one another, it's the great command. As he stood there with her life in his hand, I wonder what he wrote in the sand. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. Y'all are a great group.